Eagles versus Packers Monday Night Football showdown ended in a game that was 10-7 final score. The question is, was that an offensive embarrassment or was that a defensive showdown? Paige Dimakos, let's get into it.
Listen, let me tell you a little something about the cold weather. Not everybody is prepared for it. And when you hit
Uh-huh.
that cold weather for the first time, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I think tonight was a reflection of that. You are used to your body over time preparing and getting ready for the cold season. And I can tell you because my mother lives in Chicago, and I'm sure those of you that watched that Bears game saw a blizzard. That is not something that happens in the first week of November. 30-degree temperatures and below in this time frame is not something anybody was prepared for, and it showed. You saw everybody out there. The offenses on both sides of the football looked bad. There were drop passes. There were bad moments. There was lax. I think the Eagles came out a little like you could tell that they were on the bye, and it took them a little while to get going. But both defenses played well, but also the weather had an impact. And I think there was multiple gamblers, experts that said the best bet that you had all weekend was the under on the first half. And oh my, were they correct about that?
Did it hit?
Yeah,
Yep.
did that hit? Oh, it hit. It was 0-0, and I was like, yeah, I think the under is safe to come through here at the half.
Yeah, no, so I'm gonna go with this and I'm gonna lean into your weather conversation a little bit, right? Because it got down to, I believe, 50 degrees where I'm at in Baton Rouge. And I'll tell you this, I had a hard time preparing for this show, right? Like, I don't want the cold weather. I told you, anything under 50 degrees, I don't function well with. But to the actual football game,
This
I'm
is
gonna
a
go
good
with
reason. This is my argument for living in Scottsdale, Arizona has never been better, people. It was 80 and sunny, and the rest of you are suffering. Nobody in Arizona was suffering, okay? I just need y'all to know.
Yeah, but up like in all serious, I'm gonna go with a defensive showdown.
Yeah.
Just because we seen some of the top players make plays, right? Micah Parsons for the Green Bay Packers. We seen Jalen Carter for the Philadelphia Eagles. We watched some guys play football at the end of the day, and you can tell that both sides have invested into the defense side of the football. We've seen a lot of young guys making plays, right? Whether that's Quinyon Mitchell or that was Evan Williams trying to make a couple plays on the back end of the defense. So I think it was a defensive showdown, and also a little bit of familiarity with both defensive coordinators, knowing these football teams, right, and what their tendencies are and what they like to do. So I think that's why we kind of seen a low scoring game. Would I have predicted a low scoring game? No, I thought with as many offensive weapons on the field, right, we'll probably get somewhere into the 20s, right, a 21 to 24 type of game. I didn't expect for it to be 0-0 at half and even 10-7 finish in the football game.
This has been the major difference between the conferences and the strength that is the NFC this year. The
Yeah.
NFC plays defense, and the
Yep.
AFC has been defense questionable every week on week on week. And this was, when you talk about winning in November, winning in December, winning in January, you have to be able to win games like what the Philadelphia Eagles did on Monday Night Football. That is what championship wins look like. It's not finesse. It's not 45-point games. It's gritty. It's grimy. It's ugly. It's in the trenches. It's cold weather. It's terrible. It's ugly, but that's what football looks like. And to me, when you're talking about all the question marks we've had about the Philadelphia Eagles, right? The biggest thing for me that I took away from this game was they got a playoff moment and a playoff performance and a playoff, that was a playoff predictor early. And you rarely get that kind of all the makings of what it feels like. It's almost like they ran a simulation of the postseason. And that's what you got. You got the weather involved. There were a lot of extenuating circumstances to make all those things happen. And I think that's what it's like. You're talking about if the Philadelphia Eagles are the 1 seed and they come off a bye and they'll be a little slow. And they got, these are all things that have to factor in. And I think that's, if you walk away from this as an Eagles fan, you walk away going, yeah, it wasn't pretty. But at the end of the day, the move they made at the deadline was what? A defensive move. What showed up tonight? The defense.
Yep.
And I think that's a big thing for them because at the end of the day, when push came to shove, Jalen Hurts made the things and made the throws that he needed to win that football game. And I question more Sirianni and some of the coaching decisions that were made during this game than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. The coaching decisions on both head coaches, right? I
Yes.
think they felt a little desperate and got aggressive at times when it's like maybe there's a situation where you could have took the points. Maybe there were
Yes.
times where you could have been a little bit more reserved in your play call and kind of setting yourself up for the field goal. So then that way you know that points at a premium, right? And you can maybe if you walk away out of here with 4 field goals and the score is 12-10 or something like that, right? If you're the Green Bay Packers. Oh, but let's
There
do
was
this.
a
I know
4th and 8 that I legitimately thought the Eagles were actually going to go for, right? Like it was 4th and 8, and I was looking and I'm going, wait, they might actually go for this. Like there's a lot of questionable things that happened during tonight's game, but I think overall you got to walk away if you're an Eagles fan feeling good about the victory, and if you're a Packers fan, back-to-back bad performances at home.
wait, hold on. You're jumping the gun a little bit. You're jumping the gun. That's where I was about to go. The Green Bay Packers, all we've heard is that they should be Super Bowl favorites, that this Green Bay offense should be one of the best in the NFL. Well, Paige Dimakos, we have back-to-back weeks, right? They scored 13 points at home to the Carolina Panthers. Then they followed this
Yep.
up with only scoring 7 points to the Philadelphia Eagles. Will the Green Bay Packers offense prevent them from winning the Super Bowl?
If they play like this, they will.
Mm,
This is not a Super Bowl offense. It's not even close. And I think, Keith, the thing we talked about was how much of an impact was Tucker Kraft not being on this roster? Man, oh man, did that show up tonight.
yeah,
Those
yep.
those those off-script Hail Mary throws have gone to one person and one person only in the Jordan Love era, and it is Tucker Kraft. And he is not there. That security blanket, the person he's used to throwing up those 50-50 balls to, he's not there anymore. Who's going to take that spot? That's my big question mark, because I don't think they have the person on the roster with the background to do that, right? You've got a lot of
Right.
young guys. They've invested a lot of capital into this team and into this offense. But we talked about this a few weeks ago, and it was the question mark I had with Green Bay. That as much as everybody wanted to dog Jerry Jones for the move he made with Micah Parsons, if you make this move, you have to be certain that Jordan Love is a guy that can take you to a Super Bowl. And right now, when I look at this offense and I look at Jordan Love, this is not a team that can go win a Super Bowl. They can't. Not if they continue to play like this. And that's the biggest question mark for me, Keith, is I walk away going, this offense is regressing, and they're regressing at home. And they played against, this was no longer, the narrative was, well, they play down to bad competition. What's the excuse tonight, Keith?
Right. Yeah, no. So I look at this and you talk about identity, right? And I kind of go back to the point that we made a couple weeks ago, and is that this identity needs to be defense and run game. And they need to full on embrace that from all aspects, right? Meaning that we're going to run a football probably 25 to 35 times a game, right? And then we're going to take calculated chunk plays, right? Take shots with these wide receivers, because even the wide receivers that they drafted, right? We talk about a Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, Romeo Dobbs. These guys are vertical stretch guys. They can stretch the field vertically, but when it comes to the going five wide and dinking and dunking and making sure that they on the same exact page with Jordan Love, that part is going to take time because they're young wide receivers. And we still have to put Jordan Love in almost a young and inexperienced and partially hasn't completely showed it to us both too, right? We have to put him in that bracket because he hasn't been consistent enough to be able to bank on time in and time out, down in and down out, game to game, that he will show up if we put it all on his shoulders. So I think the playbook that they should take is the team they just played, the Philadelphia Eagles. Rely on the run game, take calculated chunk plays, revert Jordan Love into him carrying your team as a truck, right? To him having to be the hitch, to where he just has to keep everything flowing, to where play calling is not about putting all on Jordan Love's back. It's about giving the ball to Josh Jacobs and then taking some shots with these wide receivers vertically. So that's how I look at it. But that brings me to my next question, and you almost got to it. Did the Green Bay Packers make a mistake by paying Jordan Love all of this money?
I think they paid him too soon.
Yeah.
I felt that way when they did it, and I feel more that way now. And this is the problem with the timeline that they were in, right? Where you waited and you let him develop behind Aaron Rodgers, but then you saw 1 year and you paid him based off the rookie contract timeline. And you got yourself in a tough position, because what we've learned, and we've learned this time and time again in the NFL, 1 year of film is not enough to be able to say that this guy can go win on a consistent basis. And that's the problem Green Bay's in now. I don't think Jordan Love is a bad quarterback. I just don't think he's a quarterback that was deserving of the caliber of contract he got based off of the fact that he only did it for 1 year. And now we're talking about he had a major injury at the beginning of last year. He regressed last year, and he's regressing again this year after the Green Bay Packers went and drafted a first-round wide receiver, a third-round wide receiver, spent money on the offensive line, spent money to go get Micah Parsons to be able to do. I mean, they pushed the chips to the middle here, Keith, and this is a tough spot to be in now because they are spoiled. Green Bay is a spoiled franchise. They have had great to elite level quarterback play for my entire life. They went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and I said this, and this is not me being a Bears fan. Jordan Love is not Aaron Rodgers. He's not anywhere near the talent level that is Aaron Rodgers. He has an unbelievable arm, but he does not process, and he does not read the field anywhere near what Aaron Rodgers did. And I think that part was to think that you could just replicate that talent level. Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers were two stylistically very different quarterbacks. Jordan Love, to me, reminds me way more of the run and gun gunslinging that Brett Favre was doing back in the day that he got away with. The difference is now the game has evolved. There's a lot of differences in the way, but we're not seeing Jordan Love get smarter and get better in this offense, and nothing has changed. Matt LaFleur's been the consistent coach for this guy the whole time. So this offense should be as much criticism as Caleb Williams gets on the flip side for not making steps forward. This is insane to watch what's going on in Green Bay, and all things around him are good. The consistency, the organization, the devoutness to go after and get all the right pieces around him. I genuinely want to know from your perspective, what are we watching happen with Jordan Love? Because we saw good moments, we saw bad moments, but now we're seeing regression again after a year like last year where you kind of took, okay, if you split the middle of the first 2 years, you still had a pretty good quarterback. This third year now, this is a different level. This is worse than what we've seen the last 2 years. And now you've seen it multiple games in a row. What are you seeing on tape with Jordan Love?
Yeah, I go back to the saying, when people show you who they are, believe them, right? And then my saying that I've said multiple times on this show is greatness comes with consistency. And Jordan Love has been inconsistent over the past few years. And what happens is that people buy into the high moments, right? Because these two bad performances are coming off a performance where they played, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And I think he had a 3-touchdown, no interception game where you're like, man, this guy could be a top 5 quarterback in the entire NFL. But followed that up with 2 lackluster performances, right? So I think with Jordan Love, I'm seeing what I've always seen, and that's inconsistent indecision making. And I think as much as you want to put everything on his plate as the quarterback, if you're the GM, as the owner, right, you want to say this is our franchise guy, you have to understand he can be the face of your franchise, right? But when it comes to playing the game of football, you have to kind of pair this with the head coach and him having a governor on Jordan Love, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is your time to take a shot. This is your time not to take a shot, just because he's shown that's who he is as a quarterback. And can you win a Super Bowl with him? Yes, of course you can. He's talented enough to win a Super Bowl with, but these inconsistencies are going to become concerning, especially when you go down the stretch, then especially when you look at the rest of the NFC and how many points the NFC is able to put up when you're talking about offensively.
How about the lack of a run game here? When you're talking about Josh Jacobs, the commitment to coming in and them thinking, they moved on from Aaron Jones, a guy who was there and was consistent for them for a long time. Josh Jacobs had a really good year last year. What is going on with the run game? Are they just not committing to it enough? What are we seeing on that component of it? Because you would assume that would help to open things up for Jordan Love and make him more comfortable.
Yeah, well, this is what happens, right, with coaches, especially when you have that tandem of general managers and coaches, is that you draft these shiny new toys, you want to use them, right? So if you drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, right, you spent 2 draft picks a couple years ago on Luke Musgrave and Tucker Craft. You spent a bunch of draft picks on Romeo Dobbs, Dontavia Wicks, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams. The list goes on and on. They have so many young wide receivers that you spend draft capital on these guys. You want to see what you put together. You want to see it work, right? Because then if it doesn't work, then you have to look at that as wasted draft capital. And then also, if you drafted them, you believe in these guys, right? A little bit of this is kind of ego driven in the sense of the
Of
fact of
course.
I spent draft capital on these guys. I know they're good. This is going to work. I'm not, you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, is this about winning Super Bowls or is this an ego thing, right? Because if this is about winning Super Bowls, then you believe what Jordan Love told you he is, right? And then you take a page out of the Philadelphia Eagles notebook and you say, use these guys when I need to. But you want to walk into every game plan with saying, we want to establish the run. And if we can't, then we have a quarterback who's good enough to throw the football for us, which is still a really good spot. So I think that's what's going on is they're having an identity crisis because they have all of these new weapons that they want to use, but the offensive passing game is not up to par right now.
Yeah, and I think the reality is you talked about the up and down, but if you really watch that Steelers game, remember you and I talked about this on the show, he was bailed out in a lot of moments that if you looked at a
Yep.
stat sheet, you go, wow, what a great game. But if you actually watched the game, there were a lot of the Tucker Craft effect, a lot of 50-50 balls that were him coming back to the ball, was underthrown, or it was a bet. Like, those are broken plays. Those are not plays that went well. They worked, but those are not things you can build off of long term. It's the same thing we've been discussing with Jackson Dart and his style of play and Jaden Daniels. There's stylistically, those are not things that when you watch them on film, I can remember sitting with Bruce Arians with the Cardinals and watching Carson Palmer, who had a great arm and liked to make 50-50 balls. And Bruce would say, this ball, it worked, but this is not something we're doing again. Like, we are not making this throw again because this is not something that if you do it 100 times, more often than not, it's going to result in a negative play. And that's the stuff I think we've seen with Jordan Love, that now without Tucker Craft, it's going to be very interesting to see what this offense can do because they can't run the football right now or they're not committing to it enough, and they don't have chemistry with these receivers quite yet. And I don't know. I lack the excuses for Jordan Love. He's been there enough. I know he hasn't had a lot of time with these guys, but this is the life of being a quarterback, right? And these were the expectations. When you make a move like Micah Parsons, it's only going to make it louder in Green Bay because of all the draft picks they gave up and the fact that the Chicago Bears are now in the first place in the NFC North. So,
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm gonna make this one last point before we move on to the next topic. I don't want to let the Packers off the hook either,
no.
meaning that this football team is good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So my thing is from the general manager to the head coach, right? Find the winning equation for this football team. Like we said, Michael Parsons, you have Rashawn Gary, you have the young guy Edgerrin Cooper. You have a lot of players on this football team that play really good football. Find a way to win this football, to win football games if you're the Green Bay Packers.